All right, what is up, Big 12 fans? This is Joseph back with the Big 12 Football Digest, and the schedules have been released for all Big 12 teams. So, what do you know it? We're going to go through all the Big 12 teams, give a record prediction game by game. Before we do that, though, I think it's going to be really important that we cover every team's quarterback situation, dive into the situation, and give a grade to either the quarterback or the quarterback situation. It's going to be a lot of fun, guys. It's going to be a deep dive, get you pretty prepared for the season. Again, this is going to be a way too early record prediction, but should be a ton of fun, guys. Before we dive into it all, please make sure you guys smash that like button. That's going to help get the video out to more fans. Also, comment down below as we go through the quarterback grades, as we go through the team schedule predictions. Please make sure you comment what you agree or disagree with. I want to know your thoughts. Also, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. If you're a Big 12 football fan of any team, this is the channel for you. So make sure you stick around. And finally, we are a part of the 1012 network. The 1012 network is sponsored by Charlie Hustle. Charlie Hustle, you can see the gear here. Charlie Hustle, vintage made fresh, great quality clothing. Seriously, great stuff. Go to charliehustle.com. Use code 1012 network. That's TEN12 network at charliehustle.com for 15% off any non-sale items. Again, that's TEN12 network. 15% off any non-sale items at checkout at charliehustle.com. Let's go ahead and dive in and check out the schedule breakdown. Okay, guys, first up, we are looking at Utah's quarterback situation. In Utah, their quarterback is going to be Devin Dampier. Devin Dampier is a guy that played for New Mexico last year, so played at a lower level of competition, but damn, did he light it on fire. This guy came in hot and really lit it up at New Mexico. You guys could take a look at the screen here. What's super important, guys, for a quarterback is going to be down here. We're going to check out his passing and his rushing, because a lot of the quarterbacks we talk about today are going to have both be important parts of their game. Right down here, guys, big time throws, big time throw percentage, and turnover worthy plays and turnover worthy play percentage. And so Devin Dampier actually has really good numbers. Again, lower competition in the Mountain West, but you can see here 4.7% big time throws, 2.1% turnover worthy plays, a 2-to-1 big time throw to turnover worthy play ratio. Really good number, really strong number. You can see here he's 12 TDs to 12 INTs. At the surface level, that doesn't look great, but I'm telling you guys, this number matters so much more than the TD to INT, because you'll see some of the other quarterbacks later are going to have boosted numbers in the opposite direction. Now let's go ahead and take a look at his rushing ability. So moving over to his rushing ability, guys, you can see here, he went for 1,184 yards last year, 19 touchdowns. The one big red flag for Devin Dampier in the rushing column is he did fumble the ball 10 times. That is a lot of fumbles, but he had 39 runs of 10 plus yards, which, if you're not familiar, that is a ridiculous number. 39 runs of 10 plus yards is more than 3 runs of 10 plus yards per game. That is crazy. And then you look over here, he had 18 runs of 15 plus yards. Another crazy metric in his stat column, guys. Really impressive stuff here. Devin Dampier looks to be a great quarterback for Utah this year. Very, very exciting stuff. And going back to his passing grade, just to touch on it, the yards, 2,761 yards. He did air it out. The team was, he was asked to put the team on his back quite a bit. Looking at these numbers for Devin Dampier, taking it all into consideration, I'm going to go ahead and give Devin Dampier a B plus. Not quite at the elite level, but he did very good with some problems, right? The TD to INT ratio doesn't look good, but the turnover worthy plays to big time play ratio looks very good. The rushing looks ridiculously good, but 10 fumbles. So I'm going to go with the B plus. I feel very high confidence he's going to be a legit game changer, but he could run into some problems if he doesn't fix the turnovers. So that's Devin Dampier for Utah. Final grade for him, B+. Guys, and the next quarterback we are taking a look at is going to be the man at the helm for BYU, Jake Retzlaff. Jake Retzlaff has been a playmaker for BYU and has been a guy that helped them get some big wins last season. So I'm excited to dive in. Let's go ahead and get started. You can see here 2,793 yards. Great number for Jake Retzlaff. Looks strong. 20 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. That's a very solid ratio. Good looking number. Now with Jake is where the concerns are going to be right over here. So he had 12 big time throws for a 3.2 big time throw percentage, and he had 15 turnover worthy plays for a 3.7% turnover worthy play percentage. A little concerning there, right? And then you look at the last year's sample size, it was significantly worse the previous year on a much smaller sample size. I think you have to have some immediate concerns when you look at that with Jake Retzlaff's ability to do what he did last season, game in and game out, just because that type of big time throw to turnover worthy play percentage is going to come back to bite you eventually. Moving over to his rushing numbers, we can take a look here, guys. Jake Retzlaff is actually a very deadly runner of the football. 476 yards, 6 touchdowns, 7 fumbles. Now, how I look at fumbles is kind of how many rushing yards you're getting based on the fumbles. And Jake Retzlaff number really stands out strongly. 7 fumbles on 476 rushing yards. He is a playmaker, though. I mean, you could see here 20 rushes of 10 plus yards. I would not have thought that off the top of my head for a guy like Jake Retzlaff. Very, very impressive runner here. But again, those 7 fumbles, the turnover worthy plays, 6 rushing touchdowns, though, that's very impressive as well. So definitely a lot to take into consideration when you look at Jake Retzlaff. And the number one thing, I love the high yards. I love the TD to INT ratio. I'm very disturbed by the big time throw to turnover worthy play ratio. At least it's in the range of being quite concerning. It's not even. His big time throws are more than his turnover worthy plays are more than his big time throws. And you look over here at the rushing, 7 fumbles on 476 rushing yards. That's almost a fumble for like every 45, 50 rushing yards. That's a little concerning. I'm going to go ahead and give Jake Retzlaff a C grade. I'm going to say he's not a guy that's going to win you a ton of games, and he's not a guy that's going to lose you a ton of games. Could be a guy that could lose you games if he starts to get in a bad spell, though. Honestly, some of those turnover numbers are quite concerning. That's my grade for Jake Retzlaff, a solid C. Okay, guys, and now we are looking at the guy leading the charge for TCU, Josh Hoover. Okay, and Josh Hoover is a very talented player that has been quietly lighting up the field throwing the ball for TCU for quite a few years now. And we look at these grades, guys. We're going to go down here to the numbers to take a look. You can see 3,700 yards. He was right up there with the top of the Big 12 last year in passing yards, 23 touchdowns, 10 picks. Really great TD to INT ratio. And you look over here, 16 to 17 big time throw to turnover worthy play. So not amazing there, a little under the ratio you'd want. You want him at least average. I was surprised to see that. And then in 2023, he had a lot of yards as well, 2,200 on only 312 dropbacks, 13 big time throws, 12 turnover worthy plays. I think the thing that stands out to me is an 8.4 average depth of target. That's pretty low. I was surprised about that. So I think the passing numbers are a little underwhelming to me at first glance. And then we move over here to the rushing numbers. Basically doesn't bring a ton in the rushing game. Had 4 touchdowns though, so he can do it in the red zone when he has to, but didn't actually really run for much yards, only 76 yards there. So tough situation with this guy. I mean, when you look at it, like I mentioned, bringing the passing yards back up, you expect it to be more when you see 3,700 yards and 23 touchdowns, 10 INTs. With this big time throw to turnover worthy play ratio, it explains why on 3,700 yards, he only has 23 touchdowns, right? You would think he would have closer to the 30 range, if not into the 30s. And so with Josh Hoover, I was expecting to grade him higher, but after looking at this, I don't think I can grade him much higher as much as I am a fan of his, and I think he's a good quarterback. I'm going to go with a B minus. I think the yards are a big one for me where I'm pushing him up a lot because of the yards, but the BTT, so the big time throw to turnover worthy play ratio, is a little too close for my liking, and he's not really bringing anything in the rushing category, and 7 fumbles too. So I'm going to go B minus. So he'll be better than a lot of Big 12 quarterbacks, but he's not kind of going to be at the very top of the Big 12 quarterbacks. So that's Josh Hoover for TCU, B minus grade. Next, we are looking at Caden Salter. Now, he is going to be the guy leading the charge for the Colorado Buffaloes. You know, is Shedeur Sanders gone? Big shoes to fill. But Caden Salter looks pretty up to the test, guys. You can see here 1,875 yards last year. And you can see 15 touchdowns to 6 INTs. So not crazy yards or crazy high touchdowns to INTs, but definitely serviceable numbers. Look solid. Again, this is at Liberty, a bit of an easier schedule than what he's going to have in the Big 12. But you look here, 19 big time throws to 14 turnover worthy plays. So a pretty solid ratio there. Not amazing, but a pretty solid ratio there. And you got to be impressed with that. Decent average depth at target, 11.9 yards. And then we go over to his rushing ability, and he is a deadly rusher. One other thing, just going back to his passing, you can see he has years of sample size where he has big sample sizes. He struggled in 2022, but in 2023, look at this, 23 big time throws to 11 turnover worthy plays. He was a killer that year. And moving back over to his rushing numbers, we've got multiple years, 2023, 2024. He was a terror on the ground, 688 yards last year, 7 touchdowns. The big concern is 13 fumbles. So about 1 fumble for every 50 yards is very high. But 25 carries of 10 plus yards, 8 carries of 15 plus yards. And here in 2023, really good numbers, 922 yards, 11 touchdowns, 9 fumbles. So a little high there, but only 1 fumble for about every 100 yards, which is, okay, not where you'd want it to be. And that year he had 35 carries of 10 plus yards. Very impressive numbers. And you look at Caden Salter, I think the number one question with him when I see it is, are you getting the Caden Salter of 2023 or are you getting the Caden Salter of 2024? Because the Caden Salter of 2023 was top of college football level, very, very good quarterback, right? I probably put him in the B plus, A minus range, very, very talented. And then you look at 2024, still a good player. Let me be clear, a good player, but not quite at the level this guy was doing things at in 2024 or in 2023. So when I look at all that, I factor all that in. I'm going to go ahead and give Caden Salter a B. We have a really, really good 2023 and a good 2024, but some concerns, right? Where the big time throws, the turnover worthy play ratio got a little closer. The fumbles were very high, only 688 yards for 13 fumbles, but still a B is a very good grade. So I'm grading Caden Salter a B. Good grade, should be better than most of the quarterbacks in the Big 12. All right, guys. Next up, we have Sawyer Robertson. He is going to be the guy at the helm for Baylor as Baylor takes the field. So the quarterback for Baylor, Sawyer Robertson. Let's take a look at the numbers here. So with the passing numbers, 26 touchdowns to 7 INTs. That's nearly a 4-to-1 ratio with 2,600 yards. That number looks awesome at the surface level. We dive in a little deeper though, guys. 12 big time throws to 15 turnover worthy plays. So he is a guy putting the ball in harm's way a lot and not making a lot of big time throws. Now, I do want to be clear. The TD to INT ratio still matters because big time throws are really only impressive plays or impressive throws into tight windows or big time throws downfield. The turnover worthy plays still matter as well, though. But I just want to be clear. This still does stand out as a very impressive number. Now we move over to the rushing numbers for Sawyer Robertson. Not as crazy, 325. He's a decent runner of the football and put up 4 touchdowns on the ground and only fumbled the ball twice. It's a good ratio. And he did have 10 runs of 10 plus yards 2 of those going for 15 plus yards. So if he does get the space, he can definitely make something happen when he has to. A little low average depth of target at 9.4, but either way, it's a little nitpicky. I think when I'm looking at Sawyer Robertson, I think there's a lot of excitement, a nearly 4-to-1 TD to INT ratio. The big time throw percentage, the turnover worthy play, a little high there. I'm going to go ahead and give Sawyer Robertson a C plus. And the reason being is I think he'll be above average. He's not a guy that's going to lose you a lot of games. He'll be a little better than most of the other Big 12 quarterbacks. And, I think that's a fair statement. I don't think Baylor fans are going to love that number. But the truth is, I just think we're looking at a pretty rough big time throw to turnover worthy play percentage, and I can't overlook that. I think he's a decent runner, not a great runner, and I think when you see such a close or such a not ideal ratio of big time throws to turnover worthy plays, you could be looking at a season where Sawyer Robertson's luck really flips and he's getting a lot more turnovers and a lot less open receivers. So we'll see how it goes, but I've got Sawyer Robertson as above average C plus grade. And next up, we are looking at the guy leading the charge for Houston. That should be Connor Wegman. At least he's my projected starter. You can see here he has a lot of experience in college football, 429 dropbacks during his time at TCU. The problem is it hasn't always been great. He had an okay year in 2023, 6 big-time throws to 3 turnover-worthy plays, 8 touchdowns, 2 picks, and he gained some hype there. But then 2024, 5 big-time throws to 8 turnover-worthy plays. And you can see here it showed in the stat line 3 touchdowns to 5 picks. Moving over to his rushing ability, I think that's where a lot of people might think he'll shine. You can see here on 20 attempts, 141 yards, so 7.1 yards per carry. Pretty impressive there. But 0 touchdowns, 0 fumbles, 4 plays of 10 plus yards on the ground using his feet. Moving back over to his passing numbers, guys, he also only completed 56.1% of his numbers, and it was for only 815 yards. It's just hard. I mean, average depth of target is low too. It's hard to have too much faith that Connor Wegman's going to be able to get it done. I'm going to go ahead and give Connor Wegman a D as a starting quarterback. He brings a decent amount in the rushing game, but I wouldn't call it anything over the top spectacular, right? There's not a ton of touchdowns in there. And then he, as a passer, it's pretty underwhelming as an overall sample size. So I'm going to give him a D as his overall grade. Sorry to do it. I was thinking Connor Wegman might be a little higher, but a D just because we got a lot of sample and the sample's not very impressive. And I would say some of the sample is, quite poor. So that's a D for Connor Wegman, quarterback for Houston. All right, guys. And now we are looking at Noah Fifita. Noah Fifita is going to be the quarterback for Arizona heading into 2025. And Noah Fifita, I think he's a guy that a lot of us thought had a bit of a down year last year, right? Arizona was never really able to get on the map. And you can see here the 18 to 12 TD to INT ratio isn't great, but it's not bad either. And then you look over here, the big time throw 16 to turnover worthy play 14. That's not like good, but that's not bad either. That's pretty decent. And when you think about it, on almost 3,000 yards, that's a pretty good number. The average depth of target is 8.7. So that's a little low, but overall as a passer, I'm pretty impressed with what he put together last season. I didn't think it was going to look this good. The completion percentage is a little low compared to what he did in 2023. And I think that's where the grade went down a bit there. But actual big time throw to turnover worthy play, it's better in 2024. He just needs to get that completion percentage back where it needs to be. Then moving over to his rushing grades, he's not a crazy good runner, right? That's not what he's going to bring to the table. On 219 yards, he had 3 fumbles, so about a fumble every 75-ish yards. So that's not a terrible number. And he also had 12 carries of 10 plus yards, which is a pretty impressive number considering it was only 219 total yards. And he had a touchdown. So he brings something as a runner, but it's not his thing. And then moving back over to the passing, just looking at it again, guys, the average depth of target's a little low, 18 touchdowns to 12 INTs, solid big time throw to turnover worthy play percentage. When I look at this, guys, I think it's pretty clear the grade I should give Noah Fafita. I'm going to go ahead and give this guy a B. I think he's going to be better than the majority of Big 12 quarterbacks, a B grade. So if the game comes down to it, he should be able to beat most Big 12 quarterbacks in a shootout. I think it's a fair grade. I like what I'm seeing. Let me know what you guys think. But I think this is a good grade for Noah Fafita. A B, solid B, should be better than most Big 12 quarterbacks. All right, guys. And now we are looking at Sam Leavitt, the quarterback for Arizona State. These are his passing numbers on the screen, and I think they're pretty dang impressive for my eyes. 2,441 yards, 21 touchdowns, 5 INTs. So more than a 4-to-1 TD to INT ratio that led his team to the Big 12 championship and inches away from a college football playoff win against Texas. And then you look over to the side here, guys, his big time throws 11-3. So not a ton of big time throws, but when he did have to make them, he made them. And his average depth of targets a little low, 9.4, but not super low. I mean, that's a pretty decent number. Yeah, I mean, these are really good numbers. Again, not a crazy amount of yards, 21 touchdowns, 5 INTs. I'd say as a passer, very impressive. And then you move over to his rushing ability here, and you've got him at 392 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 fumbles on 392 yards. That's very impressive. And took 16 carries for 10 plus yards, 3 of those going for 15 plus yards. He really is a nasty runner when he gets the ball in his hands, and he can make people miss, make plays happen. Looking back over at his passing numbers, I'm very impressed. 62.5 completion percentage, a little low. The total number of yards, a little low. The ratio of TD to INT is great. The ratio of big time throws to turnover worthy plays, like top tier elite, just not a really high number of big time throws. I think we're seeing a ton of good here, guys. I think for my money, these are the best numbers I've seen. Again, he's going to do this without Cam Scatterbo this year, so that'll be its own challenge, and it really will be a test of Sam Leavitt. And I think there's so much good in these numbers that I gotta go with my gut here. I think he's going to be able to do it at a higher level, because watching him last year, especially when they played Utah, it was not like no one was watching him because of Scatterbo. People knew Sam Leavitt was good, especially by the end of the year. He was really good. And I'm going to go ahead and give him a bold grade here. I'm going to give Sam Leavitt an A-. He is currently one of the best in the Big 12 at getting it done. His grade's an A- for me because of really efficient, really dynamic passing numbers, a rushing ability that really passes the eye test, and the rushing numbers back that up. And he's very good at taking care of the ball and not turning it over, especially taking care of the ball, not turning it over. He's probably the best in the Big 12 for my money. All right, guys. And the next quarterback we're looking at here is going to be Rocco Becht out of Iowa State. Rocco Becht definitely had quite a year last year. Going down to the numbers, he threw for just over 3,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, 8 INTs, very solid ratio there, 2.5-1. And then big time throws, turnover worthy plays, not the greatest number here. He had more turnover worthy plays than big time throws, 4 more turnover worthy plays. That's a little concerning. Solid average depth of target, 9.8, almost 10. So that's a good number there. And with that many yards, I think that you got to give a little bit of grace. But through the air, he definitely puts the ball in harm's way on 3,015 yards. So that's a great number overall as passing yards. But I think some of these other numbers, like the big time throws, turnover worthy plays, are a little disappointing. Good average depth of target. And this number kind of stands out to me, the completion percentage of 58.6. That's pretty low. And then moving over to the rushing stats, these are pretty impressive by him. 342 yards on the ground with his legs, 7 touchdowns, and only 3 fumbles. So less than 1 fumble for every 100 yards gained. And you can look over here. He had 10 carries of 10 plus yards, 2 carries of 15 plus yards. So pretty dynamic runner when he's asked to run the ball. Moving back over to his passing numbers, guys, like I mentioned, the completion percentage isn't where you want it. He threw for a lot of yards, 20 touchdowns, 8 INTs, about a 2.5 to 1 ratio. This is the one that stands out to me, though. The big time throw, 15 to 19 turnover worthy plays. I think we have a good quarterback here, but not great. There's some things that kind of stand out to me as potential problems where, based on the turnover worthy play percentage, that INT number could go up quite a bit this year. So I still think Rocco Beck's a good quarterback, dynamic runner as well. And if they do want to run him a little more this year, I think that'd be a good idea based on what I'm seeing. But I'm going to go ahead and give him a B minus. He's a good quarterback, not a great quarterback, and should be better than a good amount of Big 12 quarterbacks, but not going to be at that very top tier of Big 12 quarterbacks as Rocco Beck for Iowa State. Okay, guys, and the next quarterback we're going to be grading is Brendan Sorsby. He's going to be the quarterback for Cincinnati heading into 2025. So you take a look here. He threw for 2,813 yards last year, 18 touchdowns, 7 INTs. It's a pretty solid ratio, about 2.5 to 1. But then over here, guys, 8 big time throws to 13 turnover worthy plays. That's not a good looking number. An average depth of target, 9 yards. So not terrible, but starting to get into that pretty low range. And to have that many turnover worthy plays or that bad of a ratio on a lower average depth of target is a bit concerning. He did throw for 2,813 yards, though. That is a good amount of yards. You got to factor that in. And 63.9 completion percentage is pretty good there. Moving over to his rushing ability, he definitely is a dynamic guy on the ground. 522 rushing yards, 9 touchdowns. That's a big rushing number, 9 touchdowns. That is impactful. 4 fumbles too. That's less than it's like 125 or so yards per fumble. That's a good number. Looking over here, 18 carries of 10 plus yards, 5 that went for 15 plus yards. So a pretty good runner. I think where I'm looking at moving back over to the passing yards, I think you have some concerns here. I don't love what I'm seeing with the big time throw to the turnover worthy play. He did run the offense well, though, created 18 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, average depth of targets a little low, but not god awful. I'm actually gonna rate Brendan Sorsby, I think, a little higher than I was planning on. Just to recap, moving over to his rushing numbers, 522 yards, 9 touchdowns is ridiculous. 18 carries of 10 plus yards, and then passing numbers, 2,813, 18 touchdowns, 7 picks. This is the number that really stands out to me that I don't like. 8 big time throws with 13 turnover worthy plays. If that was a better number, I would probably make this grade better. But considering where that number is, I'm going to go with the B minus, a B minus. So that means that I think he's going to be a good quarterback in the Big 12. Not great, but good. Should be a big time player in the Big 12 and a guy that'll make an impact. But there'll be a stack of Big 12 quarterbacks that are better than him, but he'll be better than a good amount of the guys in here. That rushing ability really impresses me. He's a pretty nasty runner. So that's Brendan Sorsby, quarterback for Cincinnati. All right, guys. And the next quarterback we're checking out is going to be Jalen Daniels, the guy that's going to be leading the charge for the Kansas Jayhawks, the Rock Chalk Jayhawk. So taking a look here, guys, honestly, Jalen Daniels' numbers are actually pretty good last year. I think a lot of people think they're really bad because you see this headline, 14 touchdowns to 12 picks, 56.8 completion percentage, which is quite low. That is a little concerning. But look over here. 22 big time throws to 15 turnover worthy plays. That's a good ratio. And this is a really high number of big time throws. That means you're putting the team on your back, making it happen. That's very impressive. And the TD to INT ratio needs to be taken into account, but still, this is really good here. That's a very good number. And this needs to be taken into account as well, right? 56.8 completion percentage. You don't love that. Average depth of target, though, quite high, 12.4. That's up there with anyone else in the Big 12. Really good number there. And then we move over to his rushing grades. And you can see here, guys, 490 yards last season, 6 touchdowns. Problem is 8 fumbles is a pretty high amount of fumbles for only about 500 rushing yards. So that's almost every like 60 yards he's fumbling. He did have 19 carries of 10 plus yards. He had 3 carries of 15 plus yards. So very dynamic runner, turned over the ball a little too much in the rushing game. But still, the passing game, very impressive, honestly, when you drill down the numbers. I got to factor in that completion percentage, though, and I got to factor in those fumbles. Moving back over to his passing, I'm going to go with him. I wasn't sure where I was going to go with this grade, but I don't think he's going to be in that top crop of Big 12 quarterbacks. But I also don't have him in the average or good range. He's right in that like very good range where he's definitely not a guy you want to count out. I'm going to give him a B, a solid B, not a B minus, not a B plus, a B. He's going to be a good to very good quarterback that's going to be, one of the better Big 12 quarterbacks, but not quite in that top tier based on the numbers we just went over. So that's Jalen Daniels, the quarterback for the Kansas Jayhawks. All right, guys. Now we are looking at Baron Morton, the quarterback for Texas Tech. This guy's a playmaker, man. 3,335 yards last year, 27 touchdowns to 8 INTs. That's better than a 3-1, kind of like a 3.5-1, something like that. And then you look over here at the big time throws and turnover worthy plays. He's got more big time throws and turnover worthy plays. I don't love this number, 8.4 average depth of target. That's a little low. 63.2 completion percentage, though, pretty solid number there. Overall, the numbers look really good as a passer. Moving over to his rushing ability, not a ton going on here. 158 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 fumbles. So basically 1 fumble for every 50 or so yards. Lots of good numbers here, guys. 4 carries of 10 plus yards, but the real numbers moving back over to his passing game. Like I said, guys, over 3,300 yards, really good TD to INT ratio. Great big time throw number, 19 total, and then a pretty solid big time throw to turnover worthy play ratio. I think Baron Morton stands out to me, and he looks better than I thought he would look. I think when I'm looking at this grade, I think Texas Tech has a real one here, a guy that can win you games. Do I think he's at the very top crop of the Big 12 when I look at these numbers? No. But do I think he's one of the better guys in the Big 12 and he's in that, very next tier? I'm going to put him at a B grade. So a B means good to very good, not average. He's a guy that's going to win some games and he's going to make some things happen. And obviously he's a deadly passer with a lot of good here. The reason I don't have him in the top crop is just kind of that big time throw to turnover worthy play ratio isn't amazing. It's not bad either. The average depth of target's a little low. And and the reason I have him as high as I do is that TD to INT ratio. So real good numbers here, 3,300 yards, and I have him as a solid B, and that is Baron Morton. All right, guys, and now we are looking at Nico Marchiol. Now, he is the projected starter for West Virginia. There's also Jalen Henderson and Max Brown behind him, but I do feel decent that Nico's probably the starter, so we're going to roll with this. Looking at Nico, we've got a 66.1 completion percentage. It's a very good number. Now, he only had 434 yards, but let's be honest about this performance. Is that he had 75 dropbacks, right? So not a ton of dropbacks, and he was able to put up a decent amount of yards with that. But either way, not a lot of experience. Good TD to INT ratio, 5-2. And he had more big time throws than he had turnover worthy plays. You could see here, 5-4. And a solid, serviceable, respectable average depth of target at 9.9. So that's a pretty solid number there. Moving over to his rushing ability, 141 rushing yards on 38 attempts. So actually kind of low for how many attempts he had, 141 yards. 2 touchdowns, though. That's pretty solid on only 141 yards. And 2 fumbles. So I'd say a decent runner, but not going to blow your mind with the running ability. Moving back over to his passing numbers, guys, like I said, this is a small sample size. We have another year in 2023 where he did get more, he had more reps then, but it looks like he did significantly better in 2024, really made some improvements, big time throws to turnover worthy plays, TD to INT, completion percentage went up 10%. So pretty impressive movement up in the sample sizes he had. I think with him, I just got to be honest about it. I don't think he looks like a world beater. And I think we have a 2023 sample size that's a little concerning and a 2024 sample size that looks pretty promising. I'm going to go with the C for Nico, not a guy that you should feel like is going to be killing it next year. But if you're a West Virginia fan and this guy's the helm, you have upside with him. He could be very good, but I'd expect a decent quarterback, an average guy. Not going to win you a lot of games, not going to lose you a lot of games. This Nico Marchiol for West Virginia, a C grade. All right, guys. Next up is going to be the projected starter for UCF. That's Taven Jackson. Um, Taven Jackson looks like a solid performer. Now, it's a limited sample size, 40 dropbacks here, 37 attempts, 23 completions. I think what stands out to me is on 40 dropbacks, he had 349 yards, which is pretty impressive. That's, in the range of 10 yards per dropback, which is, pretty good. And then you look here, TD to INT, 4-1. I think that's promising. Again, very small sample size, only 40 dropbacks. We have a larger sample size in 2023 where he struggled quite a bit, 2 touchdowns to 5 picks. But we did see marketed improvement here, right? The yards per attempt went up, the completion percentage went up. And then we look over here, guys, the big time throws, the turnover worthy plays were 1-1, right? 2 big time throws, 2 turnover worthy plays. 2023, it was 6-9. It's a pretty rough one. So I think we saw a decent improvement here with Taven Jackson. But again, this past year wasn't a huge sample size. Moving over to his rushing ability, in 2 years, we have, a bit of a different story. In 2023, he ran 23 times for 11 yards, which is basically nothing. 1 touchdown, 1 fumble. In 2024, he ran for 51 yards on 26 attempts. Again, not much, but he got 3 touchdowns out of it on only 1 fumble. So I'm going to say that he's not much of a runner, brings maybe a little bit there, but not a ton. And as a passer, looks pretty promising. It's a tough grade. It's such a small sample size last year, but average depth of target, 9.6. That's a serviceable number, pretty decent. And then 349 yards, 4 TDs, 1 pick, 2 big time throws, 2 turnover worthy plays. I'm going to go with this guy. I'm going to go ahead and give him a C plus, actually. I feel based on his past year sample size, I think he'll be a slightly above average quarterback in the Big 12. That's my thoughts. I could see this being a bit of a controversial one. And if you really feel like it's not a C plus, I'm not going to push back that much. If you think it should be a little lower, let me know. But I think that's a fair grade for Taven Jackson, the projected starter for UCF. Guys, and as we close out our quarterback grades here for the Big 12, we've got Avery Johnson, a guy that has been the subject of a lot of conversation. You can see here 2,508 yards, so a decent amount of yards last year. That we'll factor that in as we give him a grade here. 22 touchdowns to 9 interceptions, so solid looking number there. 58.1 completion percentage, that's pretty low. 15 big time throws, 13 turnover worthy plays. You like that the big time throws are just a little bit higher than the turnover worthy plays. So that's a good look. You'd like it to be a good amount higher, but at least it is a little higher. Also over here, the adjusted percentage for completions is pretty high. You can see here 12.3% drop percentage. So if his guys were catching more of the passes, it would go up quite a bit. Moving over to his rushing ability, he's quite a runner. 639 yards last year, 6 touchdowns, and only 2 fumbles on 639 yards is pretty impressive. 29 carries of 10 plus yards, 9 carries of 15 plus yards. So very dynamic as a runner. Moving back over to his throwing ability, like we said, guys, the low completion percentage is a little concerning, but the adjusted makes you feel a little better. 22 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. You'd like this number to be a little better, but I think we got a good one here. I'm going to put him where I put a few of the other guys, where he's not in that elite crop. He's a good to very good quarterback. I could see him popping off, but it's hard to bet on it. Damn, dude. I'm actually kind of taking it back. I think I might put him a little higher. Yeah, you know what? I think I'm going to. I'm going to do it. And the reason being is he's able to run and be a really dynamic runner without fumbling. Like the fumbles are very low for how much he's running, and he's looking like a good passer, not an elite passer, but a good passer. I'm going to go ahead and give him a B plus. I was leaning B for a minute, but I'm going to give him a B plus. That's up there with some of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. So he is one of my favorite quarterbacks in the Big 12. He's up there in my top tier. So that is going to be Avery Johnson for Kansas State. All right, guys, and we are now diving into our way too early schedule predictions. It's only February, but the schedules have come out, and now we are going to break down team by team who is going to win. We're going to break down every game and give you an idea of where I think these teams will finish. So let's go ahead and start. Arizona, Hawaii is coming into Tucson to take on Arizona. That is a W for Arizona. Weber State coming into Arizona. That is going to be a W for Arizona. Next up, we have Kansas State heading into Arizona. Now, this is a tough game, right? Avery Johnson's a very good quarterback. Noah Fafita is a good quarterback, too, a little underrated right now. But I do think that the roster around Avery Johnson at Kansas State going up against Noah Fafita, and I do find Avery Johnson to be a little better than Noah Fafita. So I'm going to give that win to Kansas State. So now we have 2-1 for Arizona. They go to a bye week, and next they're heading to Iowa State, to Ames, Iowa, to take on the Cyclones. Tough game here. I'm going to go ahead and make this a loss as well. I think it's going to be a good shootout between Baron Morton and Noah Fafita. The problem is I just think Baron Morton and the Iowa State Cyclones team has a better roster around him. Or sorry, not Baron Morton. Rocco Becht and Iowa State have a better roster to take on Noah Fafita. So I don't see Arizona pulling that one off. Oklahoma State coming into Tucson. I see a good win here for Arizona. I don't think they're going to have the quarterback to duel with Noah Fafita. So good win for Arizona. And now we have Arizona at 3-2 as they head into the game with BYU coming into Tucson. This is a tough one. This is a challenging one for me because I think quarterback wise, Noah Fafita is a better quarterback than Jake Retzlaff by a pretty decent margin. I think team-wise, I think BYU has a better team around Retzlaff than Arizona has for Noah Fafita. I'm going to give the win to Noah Fafita, though, and the Arizona Wildcats. So they beat BYU. They beat Oklahoma State, starting to get a little bit of a head of steam, 4-2. And then they are heading to Houston to take on the Cougars at Houston. I think Houston doesn't look bad at the quarterback situation, but I think the team around Noah Fafita edges it out. And I'm going to go ahead and give Wegman's going to struggle a little. So the quarterback situation is probably not going to be great there. I think this is going to be a big win for Arizona as well. So I believe we got you guys at 5-2 now. So really solid start to the year. Then heading to Colorado. We got to see how that fan base shows up without Shador, but I think with Prime, they'll hold strong. That fan base will still be dedicated. And I think Salter as a quarterback looks really, really good. So I think it's going to be a loss for the Wildcats, 5-3 after the game against Colorado. Then we got Kansas coming into Tucson. I think Kansas and Arizona are two very similar teams that are going to lean on their quarterback quite a bit to get wins. I am going to give this one to Arizona because it is at home, and now they are 6-3. They're going to Cincinnati. Ooh, tough one here. I'm gonna give this one to Arizona as well. Yeah, I think Arizona could pull this off. 7-3 as they head to Cincinnati to take on the Bearcats. Then Baylor coming into Tucson. This is a tough one. I think Baylor is a well-coached team. It's at Tucson, which gives Arizona a bit of an advantage. And yeah, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna give this one as well. I'm gonna give this to Tucson. So we are looking at what is that? 8-3. Yeah, 8-3 right now, and then we're heading to Arizona State to cap off the year, November 28th. That's gonna be a loss for me. I think Arizona State's gonna continue to be a deadly team, and I think Sam Levitt's looking like the best quarterback in the Big 12 for my money. So 8-4 for Arizona, respectable, probably going to a pretty good bowl, being in the conference championship hunt late in the season. That'll cap it off, guys. 8-4 for Arizona is my schedule prediction. Let me know what you guys think below. All right, guys. Next up, we are looking at Arizona State, the defending Big 12 champs. We're going to do the schedule prediction here game by game. It's way too early, but still fun to do. And they're being led by, for my money, one of the best in the Big 12 and Sam Levitt. They are playing against Northern Arizona. So at home, should be an easy win there. At Mississippi State, that's a bit of hostile territory, but I think Sam Levitt and the boys will pull that one off. Versus Texas State, we got a pretty big talent disparity here. I think they'll pull that one off. So 3-0 heading into conference play for Arizona State. Then we got Baylor. Okay, they're playing at Baylor. I think team building wise, roster around their quarterbacks, two teams in a similar ballpark. But I do think that Arizona State's Sam Levitt is a significantly better quarterback than Sawyer Robertson. So I think I'm going to give this one to Arizona State as well. So that is going to be a W for Arizona State. That's 4-0. Then we got them going against TCU. TCU, a good-looking team, a well-rounded team with a good quarterback leading the helm. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to click on that. And so this is a tough challenge. This is a tough challenge, but it is at home. So I am going to give this one to Arizona State as well. Next up, we got them heading to take on my boys in the Utah Utes. You can see the Utah shirt. This is going to be a tough one. And I would say for me, I think these are two of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12 in Sam Levitt and Devin Dampier. I think the big thing for me is where the game is held, right? This isn't held at Arizona State, and it might be a different conversation if it was. But I'm going to go ahead and give this win to Utah for the first loss of the season for Arizona State. I believe that puts them at 5-1. Yeah, so 5-1 versus Texas Tech. Texas Tech is a good team, but I don't think quarterback-wise they can duel it out with Sam Levitt. So I'm going to go ahead and give this win to Arizona State as well, putting them at 6-1. Houston, talent advantage overall for the team goes to Arizona State. It's at home, and it's with a significantly big quarterback mismatch in Arizona State's favor. That's a win. So that's going to be 7-1 for Arizona State. And then we got going to Iowa State. Now, Rocco Beck's a good quarterback, and this is a tough one, dude. Rocco Beck's good, and you're at Iowa State, and Iowa State always builds a very solid roster around Rocco Beck. It's a tough one for me. You know what? If it was at home, I'd give it to Arizona State, but I'm going to go ahead and give this one to Iowa State. I don't think they'll be able to pull this one off at Iowa State. I think this will be late in the season. Both teams will have a lot of hype around them, but this time without Cam Scatteraboo, they're not getting it done. So 7-2 as we head into the final stretch here, competing for that conference championship. Going West Virginia coming into town. I don't think West Virginia is going to be able to compete roster-wise. Somewhat similar level. They got a good defense they're building out there, but I don't think the quarterback situation there is going to be able to compete with the Arizona State quarterback situation. So that is going to be a win for Arizona State, 8-2, heading into the final two games here. Colorado, they are at Colorado, Arizona State is, and Caden Salter looks like a very good quarterback. I think he's very similar in the same conversation as a Sam Levitt. And Colorado is going to have a good team around him, and this is going to be at Colorado. I got to give Arizona State another loss here to put them at 8-3 on the year. Finally, Arizona is coming into town, rivalry game to cap off the year. Probably still in the race for the conference championship, and I got Arizona State capping off the season 9-3 to end it. Good looking win, good looking season for Arizona State. 9-3, potentially going to the conference championship and definitely going to a good bowl. So that's my Arizona State season prediction. All right, guys. Houston schedule prediction coming up. As you guys know, if you watch the QB grades, I don't have Houston having a good QB this year, and they have one of the lesser rosters in the Big 12. So I'm gonna guess. I haven't predicted it in advance, but I'm gonna guess it's not going to be great. So let's give them the win here against Stephen F. Austin, and then at Rice, that could be debatable, but I'll give them the win against Rice. Rice doesn't have as good of a roster. It is at Rice, but that's in Houston. I would imagine Houston fans will come out. Versus Colorado, it's at home, but I don't see them winning that. So we're at 2-1 now with a loss against Colorado. Now Oregon State, you're going to Oregon State. This is a tough one, but as a former Pac-12 fan, I'm going to actually pick Oregon State. That home field advantage is real, and they are very well coached season in, season out, no matter who the coach is. So 2-2. Then you've got Texas Tech at home. You're not winning that game. I think Texas Tech has the better roster and also a decent margin of better quarterback than you guys have. So that's going to be 2-3. You're going to Oklahoma State. This will probably be a good test for you guys, but I got to pick Oklahoma State. As much as they had such a down year this year, I'm not in love with their quarterback situation. I think it's better than Houston's. So that's 2-4. Then you got Arizona coming into town. I got Arizona winning that, or you're going, yeah, Arizona's coming into town. I got Arizona winning that one. The quarterback difference is going to be too big to overcome, and I think Arizona has a decently better roster. All right, then at Arizona State, so clearly a loss there. That puts you guys at 2-6. West Virginia coming into town. This is a one where Houston could sneak one out, but I don't see it happening. So 2-7, going to UCF. That's going to put you guys. I'm going to put that as a loss as well. They have a decent looking quarterback, and they've been recruiting well for a while. They have a solid roster, and it's at home for UCF. I got them pulling off the win there, so that's 2-8. Then you guys are at home against TCU. I think the quarterback disadvantage is going to be too big, and the roster qualities, the difference is big there. Then you're going to Baylor. I think Baylor's home field advantage plus a solid roster and okay quarterback is going to put Baylor winning this game. So 2-10 for Houston. That's my record prediction. It's way too early to give a record prediction, but I feel somewhat confident about this one. 2-10. Okay, guys, now we are looking at Kansas, the Kansas Jayhawks, an exciting one to predict. Pretty good quarterback in Jalen Daniels. Exciting player. Excited to dive into it and talk about the guy. So we've got Fresno State coming into Kansas to start off the season. I'm going to go ahead and pick Kansas to win that one. Fresno State consistently puts out a good team, but at home, I think it's a good win for Kansas. Wagner, another win, 2-0. At Missouri, that's a tough one, and Missouri's proven to recruit well recently. I'm going to actually give that one to Missouri, so that's 2-1. I hate picking against the Big 12, but I got to stick to my guns. Okay, West Virginia coming into Kansas. This is one where West Virginia has the quarterback disadvantage, might have a roster advantage a little bit here over Kansas. They have been hitting the transfer portal hard and getting good results. But I do think with the quarterback advantage and it's at home, I'm going to have Kansas winning that to be 3-1. Then Cincinnati coming into Kansas. Cincinnati, they have a solid quarterback, but I don't think at Kansas they're winning that game. So it's going to be 4-1 for Kansas. Then we're going at UCF. This is a challenging one. This is a tough matchup to call. But at UCF, I think roster-wise, UCF overall is probably a little better of a roster. I think Kansas has a little better of a quarterback, or a decent better of a quarterback. And then you factor in the fact that it's at UCF. I'm going to make that a loss for Kansas. So that's going to be 4-2 as we head into at Texas Tech. That's a tough one there at Texas Tech. Texas Tech has a good roster. They have a good quarterback, and it's at Texas Tech, guys. Hard for me. It's not super crazy to think that Kansas could win this, but I'm going 4-3, a loss to Texas Tech. Now we have Kansas State coming into town. I think Avery Johnson looks really good. You guys can rewind the video and look at my quarterback rankings or my quarterback grades. It's at home, but I think Kansas State also has a better roster here. That's 4-4. Then you guys get a little breather. Oklahoma State comes to town, well coached team, but the quarterback situation, I don't have a ton of confidence. So I'm going to go ahead and give this one to Kansas. So that's 5-4. And then you guys are heading to at Arizona. And this is a situation where I think both teams roster wise are, pretty similar with the talent of their roster. And because of that, and it's at Arizona, and both quarterbacks are good quarterbacks. Because it's at Arizona, I'm giving it to Arizona. That puts you guys at 5-5. Then you're going to Iowa State, and obviously Iowa State is going to be a tough go. I have them going 11-1, so another loss for Kansas that puts you at 5-6. And then you got Utah coming into your house. I think Utah's roster quality. Obviously, I'm biased. I'm a Utah fan, but it's the roster quality, a pretty big difference. I think quarterback quality, I'd probably give it to Utah with Devin Dampier. If not, it's very arguably close. And because of that, it is at home, but I got Utah winning that one as well for Kansas to finish 5-7 on the year. Honestly, before I made this, I thought Kansas would finish better. So that is surprising, but 5-7 for Kansas. All right, guys. Now we are looking at Iowa State. Spoiler alert, I have them as a very good team. Right out the gate, we got Iowa State playing in Ireland against Kansas State. Tough matchup, neutral field, fun matchup though. I love that the Big 12 is getting to kick that off in Ireland. Two good representatives of the Big 12 as well. I am actually going to have Iowa State losing this matchup. I think roster wise, Kansas State and Iowa State are on a pretty similar level. And because it's a neutral field, I have Avery Johnson and Kansas State winning this out. I just have him as a slightly better quarterback there. He's very good. So a loss there to start the season, but do not fret, guys. Lots of good coming the way for Iowa State fans as I do this breakdown. South Dakota, that's at home. That's a win. Iowa, because it's at home, I have that as a win as well. Then at Arkansas State. At Arkansas State, I have that as a big win. It's a Sun Belt game. You guys should come out of there, looking good. 3-1 with just that neutral field loss in Ireland to Kansas State. Then Arizona's coming into town. Boom, 4-1. I think the roster quality and QB play combined at home will overpower Arizona. At Cincinnati, I've got that as a win as well. I think they'll give you a tough go. They have a good quarterback, but I think overall the roster quality of Iowa State plus the good quarterback play should get them the win. So at this point, boom, 2-1, 3-1, 4-1, 5-1. And then at Colorado, I'm going to have that as a loss as well. I think the Colorado fans are still going to show up big for Prime, and I think they have a good roster plus a good to very good quarterback. So 5-2. BYU coming into your house. I'm going to go ahead and put that as a win for Iowa State. I think if it was at BYU, it could be different, but considering you guys have the better quarterback in my eyes, and on top of that, you've got a good roster that can compete with them. So I've got that as a win for Iowa State. And then we've got Arizona State coming into town. Arizona State, very, very good roster. Tough matchup. But because it is at home, I actually have this being a win for Iowa State. I think Arizona State has the better quarterback, but because it's at home, and I think the roster quality, I would lean a little bit towards Iowa State over Arizona State. I've got Iowa State pulling this one off. Then you guys are heading at TCU. This is going to be a tough one. At TCU, this matchup, guys, this is a tough one to call. Honestly, I think because both teams have good rosters and both teams have good quarterbacks, because it's at TCU, I'm actually going to give this one to TCU to put you guys at 3 losses. Then I have you guys beating Kansas at home because of a big difference in roster quality and similar quality of quarterback. And then you've got at Oklahoma State, where you got a big quarterback advantage, similar roster quality. Looks really good in my eyes. Good shot to get to the Big 12 championship. 9-3 record with losses at TCU, at Colorado, and on the neutral field against Kansas State. That's how I see it going, guys. Let me know what you think. That's Iowa State 9-3. All right, guys, and Kansas State is going to be a good one for me. Just giving you that notice ahead of time is going to be the schedule prediction for Kansas State, led by Avery Johnson, who I have as one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12 this year. So Iowa State on the neutral field in Dublin. I have Kansas State with a better quarterback and both rosters being pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and give the win here to Kansas State, 1-0 to start the season. North Dakota. Obviously, a win there. So that's 2-0. Army at home. I mean, that's 3-0. Even if that was away, I would feel good that Kansas State would win. At Arizona, tough matchup, but I'm going to go ahead and give this one to Kansas State. Quarterback advantage is close, but the quarterback advantage is for Kansas State. And I feel like Kansas State also has a pretty solid roster advantage over Arizona. So I got Kansas State winning that one. UCF coming into town, a home game for Kansas State. I've got Kansas State winning that one. Not that UCF is going to suck, but I think Kansas State has a good quarterback advantage there and a roster advantage as well. And it's a home field. Tough not to pick Kansas State there. At Baylor, so you guys are heading to Baylor. I think the quarterback advantage is very big here. Could be a close one. Good roster for Baylor, but the quarterback advantage of Avery Johnson over Sawyer Robertson to me is pretty solid. And so I got you guys winning that one too. Whew, man, you guys are looking good. Honestly, I might look like too much of a homer when this is freaking done. Okay, so TCU, you guys are playing TCU at home. This is a tough game, right? Good quarterback in Josh Hoover, solid roster for TCU. But I think you guys pull this one off with the home field advantage at Kansas. This is gonna be a tough game as well. I think you guys have a big roster advantage, but the rivalry plus Jalen Daniels, good quarterback. I'm going to go with Kansas State, though. I think you guys have a significant roster advantage and a decent quarterback advantage here. At home versus Texas Tech, you guys have a similar roster quality, if not slightly better. And then you got a big quarterback advantage. That's a win. Oklahoma State, similar roster quality. They're probably starting Haas Hejny. Who knows what he's going to look like? And you guys are going to have, a really solid quarterback in Avery Johnson. That's a win. You guys are undefeated at this point. 10-0 on the season, but it's not going to last. I have you guys losing at Rice Eccles. Devin Dampier and that Utah Utes squad are going to be hungry. Probably have a very good record at this point as well. This is going to be keep an eye on this Kansas State versus Utah game to be a college game day type of deal. That's going to be a good one. And then you guys are at home against Colorado, another team I have being really good. Keep an eye on that one to be college game day as well. I have Kansas State winning this one to go 11-1 and probably make it to the Big 12 championship. So that's Kansas State 11-1 record. Okay, guys, West Virginia led by Rich Rod and their new quarterback. New quarterback for West Virginia is Nico Marchiol. I think that's how you say it. Nico Marchiol, something like that. And so I don't have him as a star, a star quarterback, but he should be a decent guy. And I do think West Virginia's got a pretty good roster. So let's see how this goes. Robert Morris, that's a win, right? So 1-0 at Ohio. I think you guys will have a really big roster advantage there. Good way to get the quarterback warmed up for the season. So you got to win there. Then you're at home against Pitt. I think that'll be a tough one, but I think you guys can pull that off. It's a rivalry game. 3-0 as we head into conference play. You're at Kansas this time around. You're at Kansas this time around. And I think their quarterback advantage is pretty big, in my opinion. So I'm actually going to have you guys losing to Kansas because of the difference in quarterback play. But I do think you have a better roster. And had this been at home, it might look different for me. 3-1. And you guys are at home against Utah. I think Utah is going to be a very good team this year. They have one of my better quarterbacks in the Big 12, and one of my better rosters in the Big 12, but I am a homer for Utah. But I have West Virginia losing at home to Utah, so 3-2. Then at BYU, honestly, guys, as a Utah fan, BYU is a very hard place to play, especially for an inexperienced quarterback. That's going to be 3-3, and I think BYU probably has a little bit of a roster advantage there as well. And you guys are going at UCF. Now, I think this is a tough one. I think these are two similar teams where you're not sure what you're getting from the quarterback, and you're not sure. I think this is where I'm at. I think they're two super similar teams where UCF, not sure what the quarterback's going to look like. Same with West Virginia. Both have pretty good looking rosters. And because it's at home, I'm going to give that one to UCF. And I believe that puts you guys at 3-4 with a tough streak of losses here heading into conference play. Then you have TCU at home. Again, guys, I'm sorry to keep picking against West Virginia. I know I have a lot of West Virginia fans that watch the channel, so don't hate me here. TCU, I have you losing. I think Josh Hoover is a good quarterback, and he's going to come in with a very good roster around him. So that puts you guys at 3-5. Good news, though. I have you guys beating Houston. I have everybody beating Houston. Um, Houston, yeah. So big win against Houston should be a good get back game, 4-6, but tough go the rest of the time here, guys. You're playing some good teams. You're versus Colorado at home, but I think that roster and quarterback combo are going to overpower you. I think at Arizona State, there's just no shot, guys. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12 and a really good home field advantage. Texas Tech is debatable, but I think the quarterback plus roster quality, it's at home. It could be close. I could do a coin flip. But sorry, West Virginia fans, I've got you guys losing at Texas or to Texas Tech at home to finish up 4-8 on the season. So West Virginia 4-8 on the year is my way too early prediction. All right, guys. Now we have UCF, an exciting team with a new quarterback at the helm this year. A little bit of rocky shores here. I'm not sure exactly how this prediction is going to go, but we'll see. Versus Jacksonville State at home, I've got that as a win for UCF, so 1-0. Versus North Carolina A&T at home, I've got that as a win for UCF. This is an interesting one. North Carolina, led by Bill Belichick. This is a tough one. You know what, though? I don't think Bill Belichick and North Carolina have built up a roster that's that good yet. I think in a year or two, they're going to be a nasty squad. But I think this year, Scott Frost is a good coach, and UCF still has a good roster. So I'm actually going to go with UCF to win this one, to make them 3-0 to start the year with a good win against North Carolina. And then we have UCF going to Kansas State. This is a tougher one to choose, right? This is a tougher one to choose. But I think Kansas State's going to actually beat you guys pretty bad. I was actually looking at the next game as a tougher one to choose. Kansas State's going to be a tough one. They're a better team, better quarterback, and you're playing at Kansas State. That's a tough one. So lost there. So we got you guys at 3-1, and then at home against Kansas, I have you guys winning this one. Just because you have a good roster. I think you can beat Kansas. They'll have the quarterback advantage, but you have a good roster. You guys usually have a good home field advantage. So 4-1 here. This is an interesting one. This is a game I haven't had to pick yet in the predictions. UCF at Cincinnati. This is tough. It's not at home, and I think the quarterback edge goes to Cincinnati. The roster edge for me probably goes to UCF. I'm going to go ahead and give this one to Cincinnati. I think they'll edge this one out because it's at home, so 4-2. And then we've got UCF at home against West Virginia, two similar teams, but because it's at home, I'm going to give this one to UCF. Two teams that probably won't have great quarterback play, but have good rosters. So 5-2 for UCF. Then UCF heading to Baylor. I think Baylor would have the roster advantage a little here. Probably have the quarterback advantage too, if not, split at quarterback. So yeah, I have Baylor winning this game. So UCF, I think that puts you at 4-3, something like that, right? So lost at Cincinnati, loss at Baylor, and loss at Kansas State. So maybe that's 5-3. 5-3. All right, UCF at home against Houston, space game, and it's Houston. That's an easy win, 6-3. 3 games left. You guys are heading to Texas Tech. Texas Tech has a good quarterback in Baron Morton, and they have a good roster. Probably put the roster advantage to them and home field advantage. It's going to be 6-4 for you guys at home against Oklahoma State. That's going to be a big win. That's going to put you guys at 7-4. Then you're heading to BYU. Tough to win at Lavelle Edwards, tough to win in Provo, guys. And I think Provo's got the better roster and even quarterback play with you guys. That's going to be a BYU win for a 7-5 season for UCF. 7-5, way too early prediction for UCF. All right, guys. And now we are looking at the way too early schedule prediction for BYU. So let's take a look here. They're led by Jake Retzlaff at quarterback right out the gate. Portland State should be a win. Stanford, sometimes they come with a good roster, but I think at home in Provo, I have confidence BYU can win that to start off 2-0. East Carolina, at East Carolina, I think roster quality wise, BYU is going to have a pretty good advantage there. That should be another win. Start off 3-0 here. I think where the problems come into play for BYU is going to be at Colorado. I've got Colorado being, BYU should have a good roster, but I think the quarterback play at Colorado is going to be much better than Jake Retzlaff with Caden Salter. And so I've got Colorado winning that one to have them start off 3-1. Then we've got a game at home against West Virginia. This is a good matchup, but I've got BYU winning this one. The roster quality, the home field advantage should be a good win for BYU. That puts you guys at 4-1. Then you're going to Arizona. I think the problem for me with this one is just I think they have a good quarterback advantage over BYU, but I think the roster quality really favors BYU. And so because of that, I'm going to have BYU beating Arizona. So that puts you guys at 5-1. And then at home against Utah. This is a tough one for me. Obviously, I'm a Utah fan. You could tell by the background. This is where I'm at. Like, is there a good chance the home field advantage is really strong for BYU and they beat Utah? Yeah, that's a real thing that could happen. Is there also a real chance that Utah last year against a BYU team that looked very good last year? Utah had no quarterback. It was at home for Utah, but they had no quarterback, and they were able to pull off really within an inch of a win of pulling off the win against BYU. I've got Utah in this one. I think Utah's got a significantly better quarterback in Devin Dampier over Jake Retzlaff. I think it'll be close because BYU has a real good home field advantage, and it'll be a tight one, but I've got Utah winning that one. So that would put you guys at 5-2, I think. Then you're at Iowa State. This is going to be a tough stretch of games here. So at Iowa State, I've got Iowa State winning that one. I think they have a decent quarterback advantage, roster quality similar, maybe slightly into BYU, but then the home field advantage for Iowa State, I'm going to give it to them. So that puts you guys at 3 losses. Then you're heading to Texas Tech. I haven't had to pick this game yet, but now that it's here in front of me and I'm looking at it, I'm going to go ahead and give this one to Texas Tech. Baron Morton and that Texas Tech squad are pretty legit. They've got a real home field advantage, tortillas flying everywhere. So that puts you guys at 4 losses. Tough go there. Then we've got BYU versus TCU. I haven't picked this one yet either, but I am going to give this one to BYU just because I think TCU is a good squad. They have a good quarterback, but really BYU's got one of the better home field advantages in college football, much less the Big 12. So let's go ahead and say that's a BYU win, 6-4, 2 games left. At Cincinnati, I think roster quality wise, BYU is going to have a significantly better roster, even though I'd probably give the quarterback edge in Sorsby over Retzlaff and the home field advantage. I'm still giving this to BYU because of a good difference in roster quality. So that puts you guys at 7-4. And now you're at home against UCF. That should be a win for you guys. That's a better record than I thought I'd be giving BYU. And a lot of it is because I really do respect BYU's home field advantage. So 8-4 for BYU. All right, guys. Now we are looking at the Colorado Buffaloes. This is an exciting team here versus Georgia Tech at home. Georgia Tech could have a good roster, but I think Colorado here, again, they have Caden Salter leading the charge, and they got a good roster here. I think it's going to be a good team this year in Colorado. So win against Georgia Tech versus Delaware at home. Don't need to talk about that. That's another win. At Houston, another easy win. I don't think Houston's going to be a good team this year. I have them going 2-10. And then we've got at home against Wyoming. That's another win that puts them at 4-0. And then BYU coming to Colorado. I think the fans are going to show up hardcore, that Rocky Mountain rivalry, and that's going to be 5-0. Then we got Colorado heading to TCU. I have not seen this matchup yet as I've been breaking them down. And this is a tough one. I like TCU. I like Colorado. I think TCU or Colorado has the better quarterback, probably by a smidge, if not a split, by a smidge. Oh, but TCU, good home field advantage and a good roster. I'm actually going to give that one to TCU. So that would put you guys at 5-1. And then you're at home versus Iowa State. I have that as a loss for Iowa State. So that's going to be a win for you guys. That's 6-1. Then you're heading to my boys, the Utah Utes. That's a tough matchup, especially at Utah. I could see it being close. I think it'll be a good game, but I'm going to pick Utah to win that one. I'm hoping that's a night game right before Halloween, maybe like a blackout for Utah. That'd be sick. So my prediction there is Utah wins that one. So I think that puts you guys at 6-2 at home versus Arizona. That's a win for Colorado. That's 7-2 at West Virginia. I've got that as a win for Colorado as well. I think roster-wise, you guys have an advantage, and quarterback-wise, it's probably a pretty big advantage there. And then you're at home against Arizona State. I think this is going to be a win as well for the Colorado Buffaloes. All right, and then final game of the season. You guys are taking on Kansas State at Kansas State. I have that as a loss because it's at Kansas State. It's going to be two really good quarterbacks going up against each other and two really good rosters. Whoever would have been at home would have been my pick here. So you've got losses at Utah, at Kansas State, and you have a loss at TCU. 3 losses. They're all away games. I think it's all pretty realistic. That's my thoughts. So 9-3 for the Colorado Buffaloes. All right, guys. Next up, we are looking at Texas Tech, and I have had Texas Tech against the other teams in many of my other predictions, so I know I'm going to have them as a pretty good team. Let's see just how good we'll have them here. So Arkansas, Pine Bluff at home, easy win. Kent State at home, easy win. They've got Baron Morton, just to give you guys a quick overview. Good roster, plus Baron Morton, who's a good quarterback, is a deadly combo. Oregon State at home. That's not an easy win, but that's a win. And I'd say probably a pretty clear win, like 10 points. And then you got a tough one. You're going at Utah. Utah's got one of the best home field advantages in all of college football. It was rough last year for Utah, but I think they're going to bounce back big this year. Obviously, I'm a Utah fan, so there's some bias here. But 3-1, that's going to be a loss at Utah. But then you're at Houston, another win to be 4-1. I think the roster advantage is big. The quarterback advantage is solid. It's even though it's at home for Houston, it's a win for you guys. And then at home against Kansas, that's a win. I think you guys, good home field advantage. You got a roster advantage there and pretty much equal in the quarterback realm. So that's going to put you guys at 5-1. Then you're heading at Arizona State. That's going to be a loss. It's a big home field advantage for Arizona State. And they have a good roster and a really good quarterback. So that's going to be 5-2 for you guys. Then you're at home against Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's not looking very good this year. And then plus it's at home. Plus Oklahoma State, not super confident in the quarterback, even though they probably will still have a good roster around him at home. That's a good win for you guys. So that's going to put you at 6-2, I believe. Then you're at Kansas State. That's going to be a loss. They have a good home field advantage, plus solid roster and a really good quarterback. That's going to be a loss there. So that's putting you guys at 6-3. Then you guys are at home against BYU. Tough matchup. BYU's got a good roster, but I think quarterback-wise, you guys will edge them out. And on top of that, it's at home. Should be a good win for Texas Tech. So 7-3 there. At home versus UCF, that's going to be a win as well. This record is looking very solid. So that is going to be 8 wins for Texas Tech. And then at West Virginia, that'll be a tough one. They've got a good roster, but your quarterback advantage, in my mind, outweighs their home field advantage. And then I have Texas Tech finishing up the year 9-3 and fighting for the conference championship spot. So pretty exciting. Texas Tech looks like a good team this year. So 9-3 for Texas Tech. All right, guys, now we are doing the schedule breakdown for Oklahoma State. Way too early schedule breakdown in February, but still a ton of fun now the schedules are out. UT Martin at home, that's going to be a win. At Oregon, Oregon's one of the best teams in college football, and they have a really intense home field advantage. It's a really good stadium. If you guys can make it up there, make it up there, but it could be a bloodbath for you guys. So got a big win for Oregon there. At home against Tulsa, I got you guys winning that. At home against Baylor, this is a tough one. I think they have a quarterback advantage here. And I think on top of the quarterback advantage, they're going to have, similar rosters. It's at home. This one could be up in the air. It could be a toss up, but I feel better about Baylor than I do Oklahoma State. So I'm going to give it to Baylor. And then next up, we've got you guys at Arizona. At Arizona, I've got you guys losing that game because Arizona, not they have some crazy home field advantage, but I think they have a significant quarterback advantage over you guys with Noah Fafita. So that's going to be a win for Arizona. Then Houston, we've got you guys at home. That's going to be a win for you guys. Puts you at 3-3 on the season. At home against Cincinnati, this is a tough one, but I got you guys winning it. I think you'll have a significantly better roster than Cincinnati, even though they have the better quarterback. Your roster advantage plus the home field advantage gives you guys the win here. And from then on, it gets pretty ugly, guys. So you're at Texas Tech. They have a big quarterback advantage, should have a similar roster quality and a good home field advantage. You're going to lose going into Texas Tech in Lubbock. And then Kansas, you're at Kansas. I think their quarterback advantage plus home field advantage will outweigh the roster advantage you have. Jalen Daniels will help them get that win. Then Kansas State, you're at home, but Kansas State has an equal roster to you guys and a significantly better quarterback. That's going to be a win for Kansas State. At UCF, tough one to call, but I've got UCF winning that. I think they've got a good roster, maybe give you guys a slight edge on the roster. They've got a slight edge on the quarterback plus the home field advantage. I'm going to give it to UCF. Iowa State, you're at home, but it's Iowa State. They've got a high-powered team. You guys probably have a pretty equal roster quality, but their quarterback, Rocco Becht, is going to be legit, and I've got more faith in him than Haas Hejny in the home field advantage. So got you guys going 4-8 on the year with a rough second half of the year there. So that is Oklahoma State 4-8 on the season. Way too early prediction. All right, guys. Next up, we have Baylor. Pretty interesting one. I could see Baylor kind of swinging either way, where they could be a good team, could be a lower end team. Sawyer Robertson leading the helm could help them. Again, I don't have him as one of my highest quarterbacks, but he looks like a decent quarterback and could help lead to some wins here. So let's go ahead and look at the schedule. Kind of a rough start at home against Auburn and then at SMU. So I've got you probably pulling out the win against Auburn. Really could go either way, though. I just think the home field advantage. You guys got a decent quarterback in Sawyer Robertson and roster probably around the same quality, at least coaching wise, of Auburn. So that's a win. At SMU, I have you guys losing that one. Just tough to start off against a team that went to the ACC championship and is probably going to invest a lot in their roster and come out again with another good team. So 1-1 at Samford at home. That's going to be a win. Then you got Arizona State at home, but Arizona State's a legit squad, guys. Sam Levitt looks like a monster. And even without Cam Scatterbo, I think they're still going to be a really rough go. So I've got you guys losing that one. That's going to put you at 2-2. And then at Oklahoma State, I actually do have you guys winning this one out, but I wouldn't take too much confidence from that. I have Oklahoma State going 4-8. I just think you guys got a little quarterback advantage, a similar roster, and I just don't see Oklahoma State winning this one. So I believe that would put you guys at 3-2. Yep. And then at home against Kansas State, I think Kansas State's going to overpower you guys here. It's just they've got a really good quarterback in Avery Johnson. They've got a good roster, maybe even a better roster than Baylor. And then them coming in, the home field advantage won't be enough, and that's going to be a loss. So that puts you guys at 3-3. At TCU, I think it's a decent quarterback advantage to TCU and Josh Hoover. On top of that, I think they're going to have a good roster. It's very close to Baylor. Like they'll both have similar roster quality, but the TCU home field advantage, I'm going to give it to TCU. So that puts you guys at 3-4. At Cincinnati, this is an interesting one. This is one I haven't run into yet because I haven't done Cincinnati's prediction yet. I'm going to give this one to this is a tough one. Could I give it to Cincinnati or give it to Baylor? In my gut, I feel better about Baylor than I do about Cincinnati, but It is at Cincinnati, but also Cincinnati probably doesn't have a great home field advantage. So let's go ahead and give this one to Baylor. So congrats, Baylor fans. You guys are going to win at Cincinnati. So at Cincinnati, that's a win. At home against UCF, that's a tough go. I don't remember how I called that for UCF. Um, I'm going to go ahead and give this one to. I'm going to give this one to Baylor just because I think you guys will have similar roster qualities. You guys will have similar quarterback play, if not a slight edge to Baylor. So I'm going to give that one to you guys at home, right? Then you're at home against Utah. I'm going to give that one to Utah. Again, I'm a Utah fan, so I'm biased, but I don't see you guys beating Utah even at home. I think Utah's going to have the better quarterback, better roster. Then at Arizona, I'm going to go ahead and give that one to Arizona, where I just think Arizona's quarterback play pretty similar. I think you guys will have a small roster advantage, but because it's at home for them, I'm going to give it to them. Then at home against Houston, I have you guys winning that one. I think you'll have a quarterback advantage, a good roster advantage, and a home field advantage. So that's a win. So how many wins here? So we have one, two, three, four, five. So 5-7 for Baylor. That's kind of where I thought you guys would be. That's my way too early record prediction for Baylor. 5-7. Okay, here we go, guys. We are looking at Cincinnati's football schedule. So we'll do our record prediction for Cincinnati. They're going to be led by Brendan Sorsby, who I have as a good quarterback, not like an elite quarterback, but he looks pretty good. You can rewind and check out the quarterback grades if you want to. Away game against Nebraska, that's a tough one. I think Nebraska will have good quarterback play similar to Cincinnati, and they have a good home field advantage, and they have a good roster. So I'm going to go ahead and give that one to Nebraska. That's going to be a win for Nebraska. At home against Bowling Green should be a solid win for Cincinnati. At home against Northwestern State, I believe their FCS should be a solid win for Cincinnati. And then you're at Kansas. This is a tough one to call, but I think roster quality, Kansas and Cincinnati are probably somewhat similar, and I'd give the edge at quarterback to Kansas and the home field advantage. So I'm going to give the win here to Kansas. So that puts you guys at 2-2 on the year. And then you're at home against Iowa State, but I think Iowa State has an equal, if not better, quarterback in Rocco Becht to Brendan Sorsby and a decently better roster. The home field advantage won't get you the win here. They're going to beat you. That's going to be 2-3. Then you're at home against UCF. This is an interesting one. I could see this one kind of going either way, but it's tough for sure. This is a tough one. I think you guys have the quarterback advantage. I think UCF has the roster advantage. I forget how I called this one for UCF. All right, guys. Now we are looking at TCU, led by Josh Hoover, who I think is a good to very good quarterback in the Big 12. Excited for this one. Spoiler alert, I'm going to have TCU as a pretty good team. I know I've picked them in a lot of the matchups. Good roster, good quarterback, and a good home field advantage too. Let's dive in at North Carolina. Tough game to start off the season. I think the North Carolina fans are going to come out. They're going to come out loud because of Bill Belichick, because of this new horizon they're going on. But I think TCU's just going to have a better roster and a better quarterback. I think in a few years, North Carolina is going to be there if they commit to Bill Belichick and let him build a roster over a couple years. But right now, TCU has a better team, better quarterback. Even at home, North Carolina, I don't see them winning this game. So that should be a good win to start off the season. Then versus Abilene Christian, at home should be an easy win there. So 2-0. Then versus SMU at home, this should be a tough one. SMU's got a good roster, but I love it for TCU that you get this game at home. This should be a win. You should be able to ride off into the sunset at home. Plus, I think you'll have the better quarterback and equal roster to SMU. So 3-0. Then you're at Arizona State for your first loss. I don't have Arizona State losing much this year, and it's not going to be at home to TCU, as much as TCU is a good team this year. So I have TCU losing at Arizona State. At home against Colorado, though, and I have Colorado as a very good team. I have TCU beating Colorado because I think the quarterbacks are going to be in the same ballpark of talent, two good quarterbacks dueling it out. But it's at home for TCU, which is an advantage. And I think roster-wise, you could give a slight edge to Colorado maybe, but I think TCU will hang in there and that home field advantage will pay off. And then at Kansas State, that's a tough one, right? That's a tough one. TCU is not coming out with a win against at Kansas State. Kansas State looks like a really good team with one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12, plus the home field advantage. You're not going to come out with the win there. So we have you guys with 2 losses at 4-2, one to Arizona State, one to Kansas State, but still a ton of good to come, guys. So here we got versus Baylor at home. I think you guys will win that one pretty handily. Baylor's got a decent quarterback in Sawyer Robertson, but your home field advantage, plus I think the rosters are similar and you guys have a quarterback advantage, so you should get the win there. At West Virginia, I think you'll pull off the win there. You have the better quarterback by a good margin. You probably have a similar, if not better, roster, and I don't think their home field advantage will be able to pull that off for them. And then so now we got you guys at home against Iowa State. Iowa State's a good team. I don't remember how I called this one for Iowa State, but as I'm looking at it live in the moment for TCU, so don't, get mad at me if I called it differently for Iowa State. I'm actually going to pick Iowa State to win this, or TCU to win this game. I think the two teams have similar quarterback talent, similar roster talent, and I think the home field advantage gives this one to TCU. Now a tough one, guys. You're heading to BYU. BYU's got a real home field advantage. You guys have the better quarterback, but I'd probably give the roster advantage to BYU. So I'm going to go ahead and give that one to BYU. Sorry for you TCU fans watching this. So just to recap where we are right now. So win, loss, win, loss. So that's 4-2, 5-2, 6-2. 6-3, 6-4. And then I got you guys going to Houston, handling them pretty well. I don't think they have a quarterback that can keep up with you guys, and the roster advantage goes to you for TCU. And then versus Cincinnati at home, that should be a win as well for a final record of 8-4. Honestly, I feel like you guys are a better team than that, but that's what's telling me. I think that BYU game could be a win. I think Iowa State could be a win. There's some questionable ones in here, but I feel good about it. 8-4 for TCU. Okay, guys, and I saved the best for last. This is the Utah Utes going up against the Big 12, the comeback season. So I'm sure a lot of the Utah fans that have been following my channel waited till the end to see Utah. So I appreciate you guys waiting this long. Let's dive into it. This is a tough opener, honestly, at UCLA. UCLA should have a good roster. I'm not sure how good their quarterback situation is going to be, but they should have a good roster. But Utah, I think our roster is better than theirs, probably based on coaching. I think Utah is going to win this one. I don't see UCLA winning this one. I think it's dangerous that it's so early in the year, but I got Utah winning this one. So 1-0 for Utah. Then at home against Cal Poly, should be an easy win there. At Wyoming, should be a win. Shouldn't be too much, but I like that it's a bit of a tough test. Wyoming has a good home field advantage, but we should have a better quarterback situation, better roster situation. Shouldn't be too bad. So 3-0 at home against Texas Tech. I got Utah winning that. One. I don't see a world where Utah doesn't win that one. So that's 4-0 for Utah. Just to be clear, like Utah's got Devin Dampier. I think he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. On top of that, we've got one of the best rosters in the Big 12. And yeah, that's just kind of where I'm at. I don't see Baron Morton coming into Utah, and we have one of the best home field advantages in the Big 12. At West Virginia, that'll be a tough one early in the year, but I think we'll go ahead and win that one as well to be 5-0. And then we got Arizona State, guys, and I think if this was at Arizona State, I'd probably say it's a loss for Utah, but it's good to get this matchup at home. And I think we're beating Arizona State, guys. I don't think Arizona State's beating us. Honestly, you guys are going to hate how this goes, and I'm going to sound like such a homer. But I don't think Arizona State's beating us. And then we're going at BYU. This is a unique one where this is my thought, right? At home, we almost beat them. Now, that was at home, and we have a legit home field advantage. But at home, we almost beat these guys. And our quarterback play was so dreadful. And now we're going to have significantly improved quarterback play. And I just don't see a world where we don't beat BYU. Just being honest with you. I see the home field advantage being a big factor, but I think we win this game. I don't think BYU takes this one. So I think we win this one too. I think we beat Colorado. It's at home. We'll have the better quarterback, and I think we'll probably have the better roster versus Cincinnati. I think we win this game too, guys. At Baylor, I think we have the better roster. I think we have the better quarterback. I don't think their home field advantage will be enough. I think we win that game versus Kansas State at home. I think we win that game. I think Kansas State's a really good team, but honestly, this schedule is really favorable for Utah outside of this game at BYU. So at Kansas State or at Kansas, I think we win that game too. I think we have the better quarterback and the better roster, and I don't think their home field advantage is enough to overcome that. I'll go back though. I guess if you want me to pick a loss, it'll be BYU at BYU, but this would still be an amazing season. So I'll go ahead and pick a loss of BYU just because I need to pick one, even though I don't feel like that's going to happen. I just don't want to say that we would go undefeated. It's too homery. So I'm going to say 11-1 for Utah. With a loss at BYU, guys. So that will be my final schedule prediction. That is Utah. Stick around till the end. I'll give you guys my final thoughts. All right, guys, that is the end of the video. So I feel like I just ran a marathon, by the way. I made a lot of quarterback grade videos. I made a lot of schedule prediction videos. I'll be posting these after the fact in segments as well. That's kind of the idea. I'm guessing those of you that last this long might care about my thoughts on things. So yeah, the plan is to post a lot of this as segments after the fact. And if you guys do want to support the channel, a great way to do that is just, even if you've already watched the big video, watch the segments too. And make sure you watch them all the way through, because YouTube's algorithm does take into account not only how many people click on the video, but what percentage of the video they watch. So that helps a lot too. I hope you guys appreciated this. It took a ton of time. Right. It really did. It took a ton of time. I had a lot of fun doing it, though. I'll tell you a couple things that I came away from this video feeling is, one, the Big 12's legit. There are some really good teams in this conference. We are deep. And just like last year, there's that lower middle tier that could explode. I mean, honestly, you have no idea how that's really going to shake up. I'd put teams in that tier like Baylor, Cincinnati, West Virginia. You have no idea where they're going to wind up at the end of the year. So I'm excited to see what happens. I think it's going to be a really fun year in the Big 12. You think about the quarterback play too, right? Jalen Daniels, Noah Fafita. Looks really good. I'm super excited, man. This got me hyped for the Big 12. And again, this is a way too early prediction. We got to see what the rosters really look like. A lot of this was off what I think the roster is going to be like, how I've been following it, what the coaching should be like. So, I liked making this video. I had fun, guys. I'm going to get out of here. Please drop the video a like. Also, comment down below, where did you feel like you disagree or agreed with me on the different predictions, on the different quarterbacks? I want to know your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, guys. We put out a ton of content. Hit the notification bell. If you just watched this super long video, why not subscribe to the damn channel? And then I'm going to get out of here and I'm going to go to bed. Well, actually, I got to do some laundry. But after that, I'm going to bed and I got to work tomorrow. So I'm out of here, guys. Go Big 12.